Hello and welcome to my Cooperage. So this video is going to be quite a rough video because I'm going to try and edit it as little as possible, but try and squeeze in as much useful information about the Cooperage, what a Cooperage is, and just things to expect to find in any Cooperage anywhere in the world. Right, so before we start I need to tell you what a Cooperage is. So the term Cooperage is interchangeable. It refers to both the trade and the Cooperage, the workplace of the coopers themselves. So the term is interchangeable, so it's either referring to the trade as a whole or the place of work for coopers. Okay, so the term is interchangeable, doesn't really matter. So this is going to be now a tour of my Cooperage and things that are different in my Cooperage than other ones, but things you'd expect to find in every Cooperage. So probably the most standout feature in my Cooperage is all these things you see on the wall. They're called truss hoops. Truss hoops are the temporary hoops used for bending casks. So some of them are wood. So back in the day they used to use wooden ones, but obviously as time progressed they moved on to metal ones. Wooden ones are apparently better. I've never actually bent a cask with wooden hoops. Apparently they stick better to the timber when you're bending them. But the majority of the hoops that I have are all barrel and hogshead truss hoops. So I don't actually use them that much these days because it's very rare that I actually make a cask that size. The most common cask size that I make is firkins and pins, which are very small. I'll explain why I do that later on. But these are the smaller truss hoops. So these are truss hoops that I use for bending my standard firkins. Sizes vary from 14 for the ends up to about 16.5 for the bellies, sometimes 17. And that's it. So that's the truss hoops. Other standout features in my Cooperage are the block, the bick iron, and the bench, and of course the creset fire. And not to mention all the casks that you see around the place. But we'll start with the block. A block is where a cooper does all his chopping work. So standout features about the block are, obviously this one is incredibly old. I'm not actually entirely sure what wood it is, but there's been many coopers here over the years, so you can see the wear and tear that has happened. I'll move my headphones, so do I wear ear protection and stuff like that, some PPE? Yes, that's just a little side note, so we'll talk about that another day. But they're Bluetooth and that's what keeps me entertained, and protects my ears. My hands, I don't wear gloves. I like to get a good feel for my tools and stuff like that, but of course I do wear eye protection depending on the job. Alright, so back onto the block. So other notable features about the block, like I say, you've got my notches, you've got the wear and tear for where the cast has been lent on it over the years, but additionally the block has got a block hook, and this is where you will lock your staves in place as you're dressing them and listing them. Okay, and that is the block. So a block is where a cooper does all his cutting work. Chopping his heads, listing staves, dressing staves. Yep, okay. So now we're on to the bick iron. So the bick iron is a cooper's anvil. The only thing that coopers use the bick iron for is to rivet in hoops. So notable features about my bick iron is that it's got these holes. You always want to use the smaller hole as it's got less follow through. The larger hole will give you a bit more follow through, but sometimes you have to use it regardless. So it's firmly cemented into the ground. It's been here for many years. I've actually got 2 bick irons in this Cooperage and 2 blocks. I actually trained using these ones. Apologies, I've not cleaned up the Cooperage. I've literally just decided to do this video before I go home. This is the bick iron that I trained on, and that is the block. So no different. Block hook on one end. That's just to get a bit more angle leverage onto the staves when you're lifting them and working on them, but exactly the same, few notches for working on your heads, and yeah, a surface to list your staves and cut your heads on. Bick iron, once again, it's exactly the same. Yeah, this one's actually got a rounded feature, which actually helps when you're adding the splay onto your hoops and stuff like that, adding a bend onto them, so it's quite good for that. But that is the bick iron and the block. Those are 2 of a cooper's most important stations, and you will find them in any Cooperage all throughout history, okay? All right. So another notable feature in a Cooperage is the tool bench. So coopering, you wouldn't be able to do much coopering without the tools, of course. Tools are very important. This video isn't about the tools, I'll save that for another video, but I'll give you a quick skim of my tool bench. So that's of course the legendary Alex steel hammer, adzes, crows, shiv, side axe. Yeah, I've got plenty of different tools. There's about 20 different tools that go into making one cask. All will be explained in a future video. As it's mainly firkins that I make, smaller casks, larger ones, this isn't necessary because they're in level with you basically. Whereas this, I have a stool. So I have a stool which lifts the casks up so I'm not having to bend over so much so that I can work on them. So that's pretty simple. This is a solid cast iron. Oh, knocked over my bar. This is a solid cast iron stool. When I get an apprentice one day, I'm gonna need to, what's the word? I don't know what the word is. Cast one of these. If anyone knows how to cast one of these, let me know in the comments, and I'd love to make a video out of that one day. As like I say, I'll need an apprentice, but also when I do days with a Cooper, I've got that flimsy that one that I made over there. It's not very good, so I need a new one. So if anyone knows how to do some casting, or I might try a bodge job one day, but we'll deal with that in the future. All right, so underneath the stool, we have these steel plates. I've got a few outside for when I'm bending casks outside. I do all my new timber work outside. It's only remades that I do inside of the cooperage, and that is what the creset's for, but we'll go to that station next. These steel plates that you see in the floor, there's one over there and there's one here. These are just because you're hitting the casks with so much force, you're knocking them around all the time onto the stool. The floor will just crumble and be damaged before you know it. So getting the steel plates on there just helps with the longevity of the floor. And then you're not tripping over everywhere. So I'll put my stool back. Oosh. Right, so I was bending some casks earlier, hence that one and that one, hence why the fire's still on. It might get a bit noisy in here because the chimney's still on, but this is a creset. So a creset is what a cooper holds his fire in, basically. I mean, I'm sure it's the same in most trades, but in coopering, a fire is used, one for toasting, charring, but also bending the cask. For new timber, you can just fire bend it, but I'd ideally want to steam it beforehand. I'll show you all this in the future. But with remades, as they already have a slight bend on them, you can bend them inside of the cooperage, so I don't actually have to leave the cooperage, which is very nice. But on a cold January day like today, I'm just keeping it on just to keep me warm as I'm working and making a video. Right, so what's next? So this is my wall. I've been asked this a million times. What are all these plaques and shields? These are just, I was never in the military to clear that up. My mum and dad were in the military, that's years and years ago. But these are all just groups that have come around the brewery over the years, had a good time and decided to leave a plaque. That one, as it's Theakston's brewery that I work at, this one's actually Will Theakston's regiment, he's still in the army. So that one's pretty cool, but most of these I wasn't actually here for. That one's actually the SAS as well. That would have been really cool to be here for, but unfortunately not. So yeah, other notable features about this cooperage are the window. So it's shut right now, it's night time, but every day that cooperage the window's open so you can look into the cooperage if you ever want to visit. But yeah, so that's it. That is all the stations in the cooperage, the truss hoops. This is a horse. So a horse is where you'll do all your smaller staves and your buckets and stuff like that, listing and dressing, same as what you would on the block, just for smaller staves. This is a planer, a jointer, the jointer planer. You lean it down and this is what you angle all your staves on. I will also show you in 1 second actually, I'll get around to that. So this is what you joint your staves on. Jointing is the most difficult thing in coopering, so this is a very vital part of a bit of equipment. Okay, I mean, so that's another thing. So you'll see this flashed up. Don't forget to subscribe. My dad came up with that idea. I think it's great. I think it looks really cool. Someone commented on that in the last video, so thank you. And so yeah, guys, that is the cooperage. Bunch of different casks and stuff like that. Truss hoops. What else? We've got the block. We've got the tools. We've got the bench with all the tools. Augers, bow saws, crows in the wall just for show really. We've got the creset, more truss hoops. These are my hoops, okay? So I can make hoops out of straight bits of timber. In fact, I'm going to turn that off now. The fire's done enough. So I can make hoops out of straight bits of steel. Just give me flat bits of steel, 2 or 3 mil thick, and I can make hoops. But when you're making casks all the time, it's a bit of a ball ache that. So these, I buy them pre-rolled, like pre-splayed. So they've already been rolled on the back of them, so they've got the angle that is required. They've already got a slight little curve on the front. So these, I can just rivet up on my bick iron, and that is how I rivet up my hoops. I'll make some videos explaining how to do it out of straight bits of steel, but like I say, when you're doing it all day, every day, yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's just a waste of time if you were to do every single hoop yourself. So I buy them pre-splayed in, and it makes my life a lot easier. This is just bags full of rivets. Everyone's interested in the rivets that I do because that's another thing about the bick iron. It's quite unusual that Coopers just hammer the rivets straight through. In fact, let's just go to the ones that are over here. So these are rivets. You just hammer them straight through the steel in the hoops, and that is how you join your ends together, which is quite unusual, which I didn't know until I went on the internet. Right, so that's it for this room, I believe. If there's anything else in the future, I'll let you know, but we'll cover the tools and the benches another day. We got the window, we got the paintings, and that's it. So I mean, at one point in time, there was actually 3 Coopers working in here. Obviously, I did all my training in these 4 walls, just me and my journeyman. There'll be a painting of me and him here, which I can show you. But now it's just me and my dad. So my dad comes and helps me out. That's a picture of me and my dad there, Big George. But he is a retired forces man, so learning the trade and helping me out. So it's good fun. Great work off my dad. Love it. All right, so with all these tools and all these stations and bits of equipment that I've showed you in here, I've actually forgot to mention that. That is just a pile of rush. And there's also some up there. Rush is the only sealant that we use inside of the cask, and I just put it into all the vulnerable areas just to ensure that it's not going to leak. But what was I saying? So yeah, with all these bits of equipment, all these tools, providing I have staves or bits of timber, I can make casks. If the lights go out, casks can still get made. But like I say, I'm in here day in, day out. This is my full-time job. I'm not I am a content creator now, but I am actually a full-time cooper, so I've got a full-time job. Yeah, so I've got to make it make sense. So yeah, of course I label all my videos and stuff when I say I use no electricity, but you're actually going into the second side of the cooperage now. This is what I call it the electric side. I've never actually called it that before, but we'll call it that now. So obviously things that I use in here to make my life easier, because it would be stupid using bow saws every day, same as it would be splaying all your hoops yourself. It just doesn't make sense if you're doing it all the time. So this is a bandsaw, so I use bandsaws to chop my heads, chop my staves, and make firewood for, yeah, that's it. So that's a bandsaw. I also use a jointer. So instead of using the hand jointer like I showed you before, it's incredibly time consuming and skillful using the jointer, and I'll show you that in videos and stuff like that. But for day in, day out coopering, the electric jointer is superior. It just saves so much time. Yeah, just time and effort and energy, because it's not just making it easier, but it's also saving the longevity of the cooper. Hence why in Scotland and stuff like that, and these massive production cooperages, it doesn't make sense to do the type of coopering I do. It's more of like a museum piece. The reason that I do the type of coopering I do is to keep a tradition alive, basically. So I've been at Theakston's for 10 years, and Theakston's are the only brewery that use wooden casks just to keep the tradition alive, because there's metal casks out there, stacks of them, and they've taken over. But Theakston's just do this just to keep the name of coopering alive and the tradition of it going, and that's what I've been doing for years. I've kind of forgotten what my point was though. So yeah, I was trained in the traditional fashion of coopering, but I still have a production job to do. And when you go into production, of course, you're going to bring in electricity and stuff to make it easier. So of course, I'm going to use a jointer to save the longevity of my hands and stuff like that. I mean, absolutely. All right, so not only do I have a jointer to angle my staves, I also have a planer thicknesser to get my heading timber or new timber staves to the thickness that I want. So this, you pass your bit of timber through one end, my dad usually stands on the other and feeds it out, and that's how you plane your timber. I've got a circular saw, but I've also got all sanders and stuff too. So instead of using hand tools, I do have a bunch of DeWalt. If you want to give me a sponsor, being a cooper doesn't pay very much, so help me out. Send me some tools, that'll be all right. Even though I don't use them as much as I do the hand tools, they're still very useful to have if you're doing bits of furniture or any odd job around the brewery and such. So that is it, guys. That is the hand tool side of the cooperage, the bit that you see all the time, and also the machines that I use in the machine side of the cooperage. There's a whole brewery out there that I'll show you another day. If you want to see it, there's also the front of the cooperage with the branding station and all the casks that I have in soak. But I'll show you that another day, as well as the visitor centre. If you're interested in seeing that, there's a big painting of me and my journeyman there, as well as just the other bits of historic Theakston's artefacts. Oh, actually, I've got one more thing to show you. One more thing to show you. I've just filled this up today, about an hour ago. These have just recently arrived, and this is what I call my treasure chest. So these are all brass bushes and keystones. These are unique to brewery coopering. Yeah, and this where the bush is where the beer goes into the cask, and the keystone is where the beer comes out of the cask. So yeah, I've just filled that up. It was empty before, but it looks quite cool. So yeah, I've shown you that, and that is it, guys. So yeah, I'll show you all the outside of the cooperage another day if you want to see it. but this is the inside of the Cooperage. These are the main stations, the block, the bick iron, truss hoops, big window, jointer, and I'll show you all the tools another day. Hope you've enjoyed that. I've got one more thing to say, but I'm gonna read it off. So I've only been on YouTube for about 2 months. I've been on social media for about 6 months, but I'm blown away by the reaction and the amount of subscribers that we've had over the past 2 months on YouTube. That's massively down to Alex Steele, so thank you for that, sir. Had a great time making them videos with him, but it's great that you guys are loving the art of coopering and the trade of coopering. So I hope you enjoyed that video, but I just want to give a quick shout out just to these people here. Because my brother has been helping me with YouTube because I don't really know much about social media and stuff. I'm a cooper at the end of the day. And he's told me to set up like this members thing last week. I didn't think anyone would sign up, but these 5 people have joined up to become members of, I guess, what we'll call Cooper's Club. So I'm going to give them a quick shout out before the end of the video. So Harry Diddle, Chaplain Dragon, to my mum, Sharon Findlay, thank you mum. Always supporting, gotta love it. John Jarvis, woodworking. And then this one, I actually ran out of space to write. I thought it was a cool idea writing in this, but it's not that great of an idea. Neuromental Center. I'm gonna actually put the names above this so you can see clearly, guys. But thank you for supporting me. Yeah, I do this stuff for free. Coopering is a hard life, but I love it. So thank you that you guys want to support it even more. So yeah, thank you guys. See you in the next one. Peace.